sing with all we are and acclaim your victory. Let it rise, let praise arise. We'll see you break down every wall, we'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lift him high. With all creation crying, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, let faith be a song that overcomes the raging sea. Let faith be a song that calms the storm inside of me. Let it rise, let faith arise, let it rise. We'll see you break down every wall, we'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lift him high. With all creation crying, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, this is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise. We'll see you break down every wall, we'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lift him high. With all creation crying, God, we praise you. We'll see you break down every wall, we'll watch the giants fall. Fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side, forever lift him high. With all creation crying, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you.
There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray. When we hear praises, he hears faith. Awake, my soul, and sing. Sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Oh, awake, my soul, and sing. Sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Sing His praise aloud. Sing His praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing. Sing His praise aloud. Sing His praise aloud. And when He moves, and when we pray, we're stood alone, now stands away, where every promise is amen. And when He moves, make no mistake, the bowels of hell begin to shake. All hail the Lord, all hail the King. And when He moves, and when we pray, we're stood a wall, now stands away, where every promise is amen. And when He moves, make no mistake, the bowels of hell begin to shake. All hail the Lord, all hail the King. Awake my soul and sing, sing His praise aloud, sing His praise aloud. Oh, awake my soul and sing, sing His praise aloud, sing His praise aloud.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for worship today.
Hey, my name's Casey. I'm part of the team here. We're so glad you joined us.
And my name is Joe, and I'm part of the team here too. And I want to say thank you for tuning in for Active Church at Home. And we want to know if you're watching for the very first time today. We believe in community here at Active Church, and we want to get you connected to what's happening here, not just this week, but for all coming weeks. So one of the best ways is for you to just to say, hey, I'm new in the comment section, or text welcome to the number that is on the screen. And the reason is we want to send you an Amazon gift card and just let you know that you're part of the Active Church community, whether you're at home or you're in person with us.
Yeah, and if you're coming back and you're joining us again, we would love to hear about your week. In the comment section, tell us about your week. How are you doing? We would love to pray for you and just connect with you.
Yeah, we believe connection is so powerful. So get connected in that comment section. We have some church news for you that we want you to know about. Coming up next week is the separation of church and hate. It's a brand new series, and we're going to be talking about how to be civil, how to be humble in this chaotic season that we're in. And we think it's so important because the church is often known as a place of hate. But we want to remove that word hate, and we want to talk about what the things the church is meant to be for.
This month, as a church and as a community, we've been doing something together called Sharing is Caring. For each share on our live stream or Sunday service, we will donate $5 to an awesome organization called Million Kids.
Million Kids is helping fight human trafficking all throughout Southern California. So hit that share button, because that share button is actually providing so much hope. And speaking of providing hope, Active Church, I want to say thank you for your generosity, because your generosity is the very medium that our community can continually connect with those who need help and those who need hope in this wild season that we're in. We've been doing this thing called the Dollar Club, and we're asking for 100% participation. And for everybody just to give $1, maybe that's $1 above your tithe, maybe that's $1 just to start your giving journey. But with that extra resource, we're gonna be telling these incredible over-the-top stories. And today, you don't wanna miss it, we're gonna be sharing the second of our Dollar Club stories. We're committed for all of 2020 telling an incredible story once a month, and today you're lucky enough to be joining us. And so make sure you stick around to the end of our service as we share that Dollar Club moment. It's gonna be great. I can't wait.
Yeah, and there's 2 easy ways to give with us. You can go to activechurches.com/give, and you can give there and you can automate your giving, or you can text the number on the screen and text any amount you would like to give, and you can give through that.
Thank you for your generosity. We cannot wait to share what God has been doing through our community. Hey, in just a moment, we're gonna have our lead pastor, Mike Chris, share for the final week of Finding Your Rhythm. And this series has been so encouraging to me and my family, and I hope it's been encouraging to you. Before we jump into that message, I wanna pray for us and pray that God inspires us and changes us and gets us ready for what he wants to do in our life. So will you pray with me? Father God, thank you for these moments that we have, God. Thank you for these moments of inspiration. And we just pray that in this moment, whether that's pain or hurt or tiredness or weakness, God, whatever is in our heart, may we just hand it over to you. And may you instill us with the courage that we need. May you remind us of the friends that we need. May you just remind us, God, that you have a rhythm for our life that we are meant to pursue. God, we lift this up in your son's holy name. All God's people said, amen.
Amen.
My name is Mike, and I serve as the lead pastor here at Active Church. Whether you're watching or you're listening, whether this is your first time or you've been with us a long time, we're so honored to have you a part of the story that God is writing here at Active Church. Today we're concluding a series called Finding Your Rhythm, and we're talking about how you and I need to find the healthy and holy rhythm that God has created for us, and especially in this season when everything feels a bit chaotic. And over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the daily habits that you and I can participate in, and those daily habits determine who we become permanently. And all of those habits have been personal, things that you and I can actually do. But today I want to talk about something communal. I want to talk about not just you, but the people around you. There's often an underlining, overlooked component to finding your rhythm and for you and I to be effective and successful in our faith, and that is your friends. Your friends help influence and shape who you are and who you're becoming. One theologian put it this way, that if you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And so when I'm talking about your friends, I'm not talking about those that are in proximity to you. I'm not talking about those that are just acquaintances of yours. I'm talking about those that know you and, more importantly, have access to you because you've given them access. You've given them permission to confront you, to challenge you, to help you choose to be courageous. I want to talk about your friends today because I believe that if you find your friends, you will find your rhythm. And the reason why this is an often underlining, overlooked component of finding our rhythm and our success is because you and I, we like autonomy. Autonomy is making a decision to self-govern. It's being in charge of the self. Nobody tells me what to do, I only tell me what to do. And the truth is, autonomy is the American dream. We want to do what we want to do, when we want to do it, when we have enough money to actually do it. Autonomy is fueled by pride and by ego. We've seen it work around us, and once we've seen it work, we can't unsee it. And there's this assumption that comes with autonomy, that you and I, we can handle it. And you hear the assumptions in how we talk about other people, because we are very confused by those who have actually made it, and then they blow it. And then we think to ourselves, or maybe we say out loud to the people around us, we would never do that. We would never blow it, because we believe that once we can call our own shots, we're going to call all of the right shots. And then off we go, pursuing autonomy. And there's time that goes by. And for most of us, what we want doesn't happen fast enough or big enough. And then our response to that is to get angry. We're angry because we're not there yet. And in reality, maybe we haven't even defined what there actually is. And then we get disappointed. And our disappointment spills out on the people around us. So if you're not happy with your spouse, or your car, or your kids, or your career path, perhaps it means that you're not happy with you because you're living an autonomous life and you're pursuing a life goal that you've set up for yourself, and it all is contingent upon you. And the only way that you can move past your anger and your disappointment is when you acknowledge it. Because listen, you married them, and you bought it, and you're raising them, and you made the choice to get into that career. The component in all of this is you. You are the common denominator in all of this. And when you choose an autonomous life, you are putting all of the pressure and weight upon you. And initially, it's attractive. But after a while, it can cause us to be angry. There's a fine line between autonomy and accessibility. And that line is the difference between freedom and addiction. You get to invite people to speak into your life. You get to invite people to confront you and challenge you. But if you choose autonomy, the only voice that you're going to hear is your voice. The loudest voice in your head will always be your voice. And that's why the quest for autonomy is dangerous, because it's an appetite that can never be fully or finally satisfied. Autonomy is power, and we always want more power. And then when we get more power, power can be intoxicating. And listen, intoxicated people rarely make wise decisions. You've seen it, maybe you've experienced it. And what happens when you choose autonomy is after some time, there isn't anyone around you to help you. Suddenly your relationships become a means to an end rather than helping you to be better in the end. And so that's why I want to talk about your friends today. Because I want you to find your rhythm. And we believe at Active, when you find your friends, you'll find your rhythm. I want to take you to a story in the scriptures that I think we can learn from. It's a story about a man who chooses autonomy, and then you get to see the disastrous results from that choice. And I think there's a lesson in what this man did that can help us to choose accessibility and accountability rather than autonomy. The story is about a real man who really lived, and he's pretty famous. His name is David. He was the first king of Israel. And David was about 50 years old when he made a very infamous decision. He had been ruling in Israel for about 20 years. He had multiple wives. He had multiple concubines because it was accepted in that culture. He had been building a legacy. He was a warrior. He had many homes. But in his 50s, he became very unsatisfied with all that he had. And there's a moment where he is out on his balcony and he sees his neighbor's wife in a very private moment, and he decides to send his servant to go and get her. And his servant tries to talk him out of it. And that's where we pick up this story in a letter called 2 Samuel in the Old Testament of the Bible. And I'd love for you to follow along. 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting in verse 3. If you have a Bible with you or the Bible app with you, would you open up to 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting in verse 3. And of course, if you're watching this, the verses will be on the screen. The story goes this way. David sent someone to find out about her, this woman, this neighbor of his. And the servant said, "Isn't that Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" You can see that the servant is trying to play defense here. He says, "My king, isn't that Bathsheba somebody's daughter? And by the way, you know the name of her father. His name is Elam. And isn't that Bathsheba somebody's wife? And by the way, you know the name of her husband. His name is Uriah. He is your number 2 man in your army." And you would think that these words would actually stop David and cause him to go back inside. But they don't. Because isn't it true that sometimes the powerful really struggle to listen to those on the payroll? And then David sends the servant. And we're told that David sent messengers to her, and she came to him. And he slept with her. And then she went back home. I hate reading that verse. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a father of girls. I'm a girl dad. And I love my girls. And that verse feels so disgusting because it's someone just bringing someone as a product into their home. There is no love, there is no intimacy, there is no relationship. It's just a body, not a soul. And David wants her to come into his home, and here's where I really wrestle, is that what could she say? He's the king. She can't say no. She could lose her life. And so she comes into the home of the king, and they have a moment together, and then he sends her back to her home. And maybe if you're familiar with the story, you're familiar with what happens next. If you're not, this woman gets pregnant, which becomes a big problem because David's married, and so is she. And her husband, as I mentioned, is leading David's army. And so now he has to cover up this problem. And what David does is what many people do when they live an autonomous life. David tries to control the outcome. He decides that he's going to try to make it look like this baby was the baby of this woman's husband and not his. And then he pitches this idea to the woman, and she goes along with it because, after all, he's the king, right? So David tells his number one guy, Joab, to bring his number two guy, Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, home. Because David is going to try to manipulate and maneuver this situation to cover his terrible autonomous decision. He tells Uriah to go home. You've earned a vacation, a night off. And yet Uriah doesn't go home that night. He actually sleeps outside with his servants. And this, the next morning, frustrates David. And so David asks Uriah, why didn't you go home? And here's his response. The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents. The ark was something that represented God to the people. It was a reflection of God being present with the people. And Israel and Judah are the people of God. Uriah says they're all staying in tents. My master Joab is staying in a tent, and even my Lord's men, all that are serving with me, are staying in tents. So how could I go to my house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? We discover just in that statement that Uriah seems to be a pretty honorable man. And David's not. We, you and I, especially the guys that are watching this or listening to this, it would be wise of us to take our cues from Uriah, because he is someone who believes that he is free to go and do whatever he wants, but out of respect for God and for others, he decides not to. So David is frustrated, so he tries again. This time, he gets Uriah drunk and sends him home. And he thought to himself, surely Uriah would do what I would do in this situation if I were him. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat amongst his servants, and he did not go home. Could we pause for a moment? Could we just consider something? It's a question that I was asking myself as I read through this, and I want to ask this question of you. In fact, I have two questions I want to ask of you. The first is this. When they tell your story, and they being those that you love, they being those that are around you, they being those that you have raised, when they tell your story, what story do you want told? When they talk about you, what do you want them to talk about? Did you know that every decision that you make becomes a permanent part of your story? So when they're talking about you, what would you love for them to talk about? There's going to be a day where we all take our last breath, and we can't save our lives. We know that we will one day end our lives. Our lives will end, and we'll be in the presence of God. But the thing that we can do is we can protect and preserve our legacy. And the tension we have to wrestle with, and David's wrestling with, and even Uriah is wrestling with, is your legacy a story that is worth telling? Are you leaving a legacy that people will celebrate? That's the tension that we find in this story. And Uriah's legacy is one of honor and humility. And here's the irony of this story. David and his legacy is one where he is being outmaneuvered by someone who wasn't even aware that maneuvering was happening. Uriah was trying to be an honorable guy to God and his king and his people. And here's David trying to cover his tracks, and it frustrated him so much that the writer tells us this. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, and he sent it with Uriah. And in the letter he wrote, "Put Uriah at the front of the line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and die." Uriah is walking back to battle with the letter that will condemn him. Honorable man, filled with humility, wants to honor the king and honor God and honor his wife. And David decides to cover his tracks. He made an autonomous decision, and he wants him eliminated. He wants him killed. And Joab obeys the king, and Uriah is killed. And we're told that when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned. And after the time of mourning was over, David had brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. And he thought that only he knew what really was going on. But come on, everybody knew. And isn't it true when we think that we're the only ones that know? The reality is that everybody knows, everybody sees it, everybody's feeling it, everybody's aware of it. David fooled himself. He thought that what was planned in secret would remain in secret, but isn't it true that secrets seep? And here's David trying to cover his tracks, and his tracks have been uncovered. The only person that was in the dark in this moment was David. And he permanently undermined his credibility and his legacy. And think about this. When you think about the story of David, whether you're new to church or you've been doing this a long time, what do you know about King David? I think there's two stories that you know. The first is David and Goliath. David as a young man who comes and fights a giant and defeats him with a slingshot and a rock. And Israel wins a war against the Philistines. We're all aware of that. It's like a sports analogy, right? The strong team versus the weak team, and the weak team wins. David versus Goliath. The other story that David's infamous for is the one that we all know about. David and Bathsheba. There's even a song about it. And in one decision, David permanently undermined his credibility, his legacy, and I would even say his moral authority, not just with the people around him, but with those that were most important to him, his children. Here's the interesting thing about this story. David's affair didn't cost him his crown. David's affair cost him his family. Because right after this, there was a terrible interaction, a horrific interaction between David's son and his youngest daughter. His son takes advantage of his daughter, and David does nothing about it because he's feeling inadequate. He believes that he is not someone that should say anything because he made a terrible decision. And because of that, then David's oldest son actually doesn't like his father anymore and decides that he'll be a better king. And so a civil war breaks out in Israel because of David's one decision. All of the things that are important to David are now gone because he chose autonomy. He was the one that was going to self-govern. And he thought, I'd never blow this. And yet he did. Do you ever have a moment where you pause in your life and amongst all of the crisis that's happening around you? Do you ever have a moment in your life where you go, how did I get here? Like as you look around, how did I get here? How did I arrive here? Why are my relationships like this? Why is my workflow like this? Why is my life a mess? And the truth is, in those moments, if we're honest, we can find the answer. Because there's always more to the story, right? And for David, there's actually more to his story. There's actually backstory. Where did this all begin? The writer tells us this in 2 Samuel chapter 11 in verse 1. Before David's decision, he made this autonomous decision, and it changed his life. In the spring, at a time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab and remained in Jerusalem. At a time when kings go do what kings are supposed to go and do, David didn't. He decided to send someone in his place and to stay alone and isolated in his palace, away from his guys, away from his community, away from his boys, the ones who had access to him. In his attempt to maintain autonomy, David paid in the area where nobody can control outcomes. He paid for his decisions in the area of his family. Because autonomy is a myth. It's a trap. It's an unworthy goal. I've shared before here at Active that I am a history nerd. I will read about American history. I'll read about world history. I love history. And I've passed that love on to my kids. Recently, I picked up a book about a man named Albert Speer. You don't know him, but I'm sure that you know about what he did. Because Albert Speer is the architect for a man named Adolf Hitler. He helped dream about what Nazi Germany would look like. He helped dream about what Nazi Germany would feel like. Albert Speer was Hitler's right-hand man. After World War II, he was arrested, put on trial, and convicted of crimes against humanity, and he spent 20 years in prison. He ended up dying in 1981. His personal stories were written in a book called Inside the Third Reich. And I was reading this book and something caught my attention. And I think it will catch your attention as well. Speer's personal thoughts in this book are powerful, but one personal thought that stopped me in my tracks was his reasoning as to why Adolf Hitler actually became the madman that he was. And it's in these words that we recognize and we can see and acknowledge how dangerous autonomy is and how important accessibility and accountability is to the community around you. Speer writes these words: "There is a special trap for the holder of power, whether the director of a company, the head of a state, or the ruler of dictatorship. His favor is so desirable to his subordinates that they will sue for it by every means possible. They have a longing for what their leader has. As a result, servility becomes endemic among his entourage, who compete among themselves for their show of devotion. They're fighting to be the greatest next to who they believe is the greatest. And here's the result, according to Speer. This, in turn, exercises a sway upon the ruler, who becomes corrupted in his turn." And then he makes this really interesting observation. He says this: "The key to the quality of a man in power is how he reacts to the situation. I have observed a number of industrialists and military men who knew how to fend off this danger." And then here's the statement that stopped me in my tracks, and maybe it'll stop you. He said this: "Adolf Hitler himself put up no visible resistance to the evolution of a court." Evolution of a court is a fancy way of saying this: Adolf Hitler decided to choose autonomy over accessibility. Adolf Hitler decided to make decisions on his own instead of surrounding himself with those who would help him to be accountable to something greater. Adolf Hitler decided that accountability was not worth it, that authentic friendships were not worth it, and there was nothing that he set up in his life to stop him from doing whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and he had the resources to do that because autonomy led the way. My friends, pay attention to this. Regardless of who you are, how long or short you have been following Jesus, whether you're new to this or you've been doing this a long time, regardless of your maturity, your experiences, or your season of life, friends, listen, resist the evolution of a court. Meaning, do not choose to live a life of autonomy, because autonomy is dangerous. It's a myth. It's an unworthy goal. Choose to live a life in community, when others have full access to you, especially those that need nothing from you, because great achievement happens when you give access to people around you and they need nothing from you, because then they're going to speak to you authentically and genuinely. They're going to talk to you honestly, and they're going to know what it is that you want, and they're going to help you achieve it. They will help you find your rhythm. Autonomy may not cause you to lose your crown, but it might cause you to lose your soul. And we can see that in the story of David and in the story of Adolf Hitler. Friends, community is what you were created for. And maybe that's why, just speaking honestly, vulnerably, maybe that's why we're so divided as a nation and as a world. Maybe that's why we can't pause and empathize and sympathize. Because maybe we've decided that we're going to choose autonomy over accessibility. And autonomy is not the way of Jesus. When we think about how the writers of the scriptures described the people of God, Jesus himself called us the church. And one writer, his name is Paul, says that the church is like the body of Christ. And when the body has a part that's broken, we either heal it or remove it. We don't allow it to stay broken. And the way that we don't allow it to stay broken is that the whole body works to bring healing to it. That's the life of community. Things stay broken when we decide to choose autonomy. You were created for community, not autonomy, because autonomy is a myth, it's a lie, and it will cost you more than you think. So, my friends, if God ever sees fit to make you a king or a queen, when the day comes, keep those who knew you before and know you best, keep them close, because they are not impressed, but they are important. And they will be able to speak into your life and into your soul like no one else. Choose accessibility and accountability over autonomy. And in the springtime, when kings and queens go off to war, suit up and go. Choose accessibility and accountability over autonomy. Because that's when you will tell a better story. And when you find your friends, you will find your rhythm. And I know that maybe you're thinking, I need some friends. Maybe as you evaluate the circle that you're in, you need those relationships to grow, or maybe you need to find relationships that can help you grow in your maturity, in your wisdom, in your faith, in your relationship with Jesus. And that's why Active Church exists, because we want to help you meet Jesus and learn to follow Jesus. And so I want to invite you to consider something that we are launching at the end of September. It's called Rooted. It's an opportunity to find your faith, to find your purpose, to find God, and to find your friends. Rooted will change your life. And I want to invite you to consider being a part of Rooted. You can right now grab your phone and text Rooted to the number that you see on the screen. But listen, don't take my word for it on how Rooted can change your life. I want you to hear the word of my friend and one of our team members, Lacey Webb.
Hey Active Church, this is Lacey, and I oversee Progress Together here at Active. I want to invite you to something that we're doing called Rooted. Rooted is a 10-week Bible study that really helps you to connect on a deeper level with God, the church, and even find your purpose in Christ. Does that sound like an outrageous statement? We thought so too. A couple of years ago, my husband and I decided to do Rooted. We were at a really broken part in our lives and just had a lot of unanswered questions and pain that we were stepping into, but we needed that hope and that purpose in God. Rooted came up, we didn't know what to expect, but we decided to step into it anyways. We put in the work, we committed, and we truly saw life change happen before our eyes. I remember Pastor Mike telling us, before Rooted, you and Ryan were followers of God, but now I truly see this follower of God. And our whole lives changed. Our perspective changed, our priorities changed, and I really feel like we looked at life through a different lens. The Spirit was on fire in me, and I just knew that I had to share this with other people. So since we went through Rooted, we've led 2 Rooted groups, and now I am so excited that we are launching Rooted as a church-wide study. I invite you to step into this. I invite you to connect with us by texting Rooted to the number on the screen and finding your life change, finding your better story. Can't wait to connect.
If you've been thinking about jumping into a connection group, or you're looking for a small group, or you just need more community in your life, Rooted is that community for you. Rooted is that group that's gonna help you connect to God, your church, and also your purpose in life. I love our Rooted groups. I love our Rooted community. And if you're interested, don't forget, text Rooted to the number that is on the screen. Again, that is Rooted to the number on the screen. We're gonna be sending out some info daily just to let you know about some of the exciting things that are happening here at Active Church, and specifically with our Rooted groups.
Rooted is a great way to get started with connection groups here at Active Church, and we are so excited right now in this moment to present to you a better story brought to you by the Dollar Club and your generosity. So let's take a look, Active Church.
Hey everybody, my name is Joe and I'm a pastor here at Active Church in Yucaipa, and today I have the privilege and honor of sitting with the CEO and the leader of the organization Million Kids, Opal Singleton. Opal, thank you so much for sitting with us today. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Tell me about you. What's your story? What's your background? Tell us about Million Kids a little bit.
Well, I'm retired. This is my retirement you're looking at here. I retired in about 2001. In 2010, God had a different plan for my life. I went to a meeting that was a very small meeting. It was being led by a member of your church. He and I met that night, and he was starting the Riverside County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. He was an amazing individual because he was one of 5,000 sheriff deputies in Riverside County. And he looked around and he said, you know, what we're seeing here is not prostitution as usual, but it's forced prostitution, and we need to do something about it.
So tell me about Million Kids. What does the organization do throughout Southern California?
Our mission is keeping kids safe from predators. We deal with human trafficking, sex and labor trafficking, sextortion, which is when kids send a naked photo and they get blackmailed, social media exploitation, and child pornography. But we're really all about prevention and intervention. That's where my heart is. Once you've sat with somebody who's been violated, you say to yourself, this does not have to happen.
So tell me, what are some of the hopes that you have for Million Kids? As you dream about the future, as you think about what's next, what's the hope that you have for where this goes?
My hope is to get this message across America within the next 12 months. And that's saying something, but God has worked in a mighty way.
Yeah. And so what is that message?
That message is that grooming and sex trafficking and sextortion don't happen normally with kidnapping. It looks like a relationship. You know, you go online and you meet somebody and you fall in love. And especially with these 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, they just want to please somebody and they get this fantasy going. You see, this grooming is not about a real life relationship. It's about that fantasy. Mom and dad are not arguing with the boyfriend and they're not arguing with the daughter. They are arguing with a fantasy. When a parent gets in a tug of war with a fantasy, they're going to lose. I believe the most important, if you can only do one thing, grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, aunt and uncle, whoever you are, if you will learn 4 words, I believe in you. And you will use that, especially if you're a male, and you learn these 4 words, I believe in you. You will change the world of sex trafficking and sextortion. Because think about what a pimp or predator is doing. I believe in you, baby. I'll take care of you. I'll be your daddy. I'll be there for you. We all want to be loved. And when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, Why are you on there twerking? You're waiting for somebody to come along and say, hey baby, you're hot. You're great. These 4 words are the most important words we could ever say. And so I believe that if parents do nothing else, take the time to spend with your child and sit and look eye to eye to your child and say, do you have any idea how important you are to me?
Wow.
Do you understand how proud I am of you?
Yeah.
And I believe in you. And that will be the most important thing you can do.
Opal, I want you to know that we value you and we value your organization so much.
Thank you.
And so I have a friend that I want just to come and speak with you for just a moment and just share about what we're doing here at Active to further our partnership with Million Kids. So if you'll just give me a moment.
Sure, fantastic.
Well, hi, Opal.
Hi.
How are you? We've met before, but my name is Mike. I'm the lead pastor here.
I knew you might.
And I wanted to come in and just share a couple things with you. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. What you're doing is powerful work.
Well,
And I know that it can be overwhelming. I know that it can be heavy. But the fact that you are embodying what it means to be free, what it means to love, what it means to rescue, like that is what Jesus has called us to do. And so at Active, we love that and we love better stories. And so our commitment is always to tell a better story. And so earlier this year, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, we decided that once a month, we wanted to tell a better story in a very tangible and helpful way. So we started what's called the Dollar Club. And we asked our church if they would give $1 more than what they would normally give, or if they've never given before, to give $1. And every dollar that we receive was going to go to a person or an organization that we believe is telling a better story. And so this month, we chose Million Kids.
All right.
And
Thank
so
you.
we have a check for you, $2,000.
Holy cow.
Because our church decided to support you and cheer you on. And I want you to know that that is just the start of our relationship with you, because we want to partner with you. We want to be in the trenches with you. We want to stand in the gap with you because we believe in what you're doing, but more importantly, we believe in what God has invited this organization to do in the world. So on behalf of Active, we love you and we believe in you, and that gift is for you.
Mike, I want to thank you. I've known you a long time now.
Yep.
And you know me, it's not me that does it. I show up, I do the best I can, and then God picks it up and runs with it. And God is at the heart of this matter. And I thank you so much. Of all times, this is like the greatest gift you could give. We can't go out and make presentations. We have a hard time selling our books online right now because it's usually when I speak that we sell them and like that. So this is the greatest time of challenge that we have ever known. And the need, as we just talked about, is greater than ever as our kids go online for the entire, and younger and more time online and more time unsupervised. And it's just like, oh my.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Active, we can do so much more together. I love what the Dollar Club represents. It represents all of us in one place, in one space, just saying, we believe in the future. We believe that the best is yet to come, and we believe that there's better stories that are possible in every single season. It was such an honor connecting with Opal, and it was such an honor to be able to partner with Million Kids, and I cannot wait to see where this partnership takes us in the future. Active, thank you for your generosity, and let's keep giving, let's keep telling these better stories. We got another Dollar Club moment coming to you next month, but you can participate today with that.
This is such a great opportunity for you to start giving and for you to make a difference in your community locally and globally. And we're so excited about what's coming next month. But if you want to be a part of the Dollar Club, you can give at activechurches.com, hit that give button. You can give any amount you'd like, or you can text the number on the screen and you text any amount you would like to give to be a part of this awesome journey we're on.
Yeah, we mean it when we say your generosity is changing the world. I know it's changed our world. It's changed this church, and it's changed so many people's lives. So Active Church, thank you for being a part of the story that's happening here. And can I just say, I cannot wait to see you next week for Active at Home. Invite a friend, tell someone you love, and let's change the world together.